All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Leo Holland. I'm with Out on Film, and we are talking with Corey Sherman, who is the director and writer behind Big Boys, which is an amazing movie that's screening Saturday, the 23rd at 6 p.m. at Out on Film. Uh, hey, Corey, how are you?
Hey Leo, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I love the movie. It's amazing, and congratulations on all the success. But I was just curious, just to start out, like what inspired you to make this movie?
Yeah, I was really inspired, honestly, by a lot of personal experiences and memories that I had, and wanting to make a coming of age story that um, was focused on the moment when somebody really comes out to themselves and starts to accept that they might be gay and all the feelings that come along with that, which in my case were a lot of excitement, but then also a lot of dread and confusion and fear. And I wanted to make a movie all about a sort of contained period of time where someone is wrestling with all those feelings at once and then emerges the other side stronger for it and more in touch with who they really are. And I really was interested in learning about yourself through having an unrequited crush because growing up, there were a lot of guys who I was interested in who were straight or older or unavailable in some way. But that didn't stop me from wanting them and wanting to get as close to them as I possibly could. And I think that there's something very sort of tender in that like pursuit. And then also there's a lot of opportunities for comedy too. And so once the idea of setting this at a campground over the course of this single weekend, because I really like movies that take place in like short periods of time and movies that take place on trips. And
Mhm.
so once that package sort of came to mind, then I felt like I could move ahead with writing the story.
Very nice, very nice. This movie sort of reminded me of like a lot of coming of age movies I've seen, especially eighth grade, where there's
Yeah.
this balance of like innocence and this looming adulthood and sexuality. And also just being a teenager is one of the most terrifying things ever. And watching this movie, I had like trauma flashbacks. So great job to you for writing something so great and the actors for portraying it to caused me to go back to that dark time in my life. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kudos. But was that an intentional part of writing this movie to like up the cringe factor and to show like this isn't just unrequited love, this is the trauma and just like awkwardness of being a lonely teenager?
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I mean, eighth grade was a huge reference point for this movie. I just think it has such a great balance of it's got real energy and momentum, and it's really funny and well observed. And it also doesn't shy away from cringier moments, and stuff that's really kind of brutal. And I am always been really drawn to movies like that that have a balance of like warmth and then a sort of like unflinching honesty about the way that people behave with one another and how little things that people say and do can feel really, really hurtful or frightening. And I really just wanted to, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of stuff that I felt like I hadn't seen in a coming of age story before that, like you're saying, were like small but sort of traumatic and scarring moments. And I wanted, and I felt, and I could still feel as a 29-year-old that those moments had stuck with me and were still affecting me. And I wanted to make something that looked at that stuff with like as clear-eyed of a perspective as possible, but also very compassionately and with a sense of humor. And in the hopes that people watching it could sort of have a little bit of a catharsis together and sort of the communal experience. I mean, this is why it's so great to show it at a festival like Out on Film, is because people get to watch it in person together and be like, oh, we all went through that together. We all can laugh about it now and feel like a little bit more solidarity in what at the time felt like a very isolating, lonely experience.
Exactly. And to further talk about those small moments that happen in between people, especially in this movie and in life, I really appreciated the fact that you were allowed yourself and the story to sort of like trust the audience to understand what was happening as opposed to having these big melodramatic moments, which is very easy to do, especially for like a queer film and especially for teenagers. There could be like this big climax full of crying and fighting and shouting and speeches. Uh,
Yeah.
what allowed you, or what process did you go through writing it to just let yourself trust the audience and trust the viewer enough to say, they're going to understand it. This is going to resonate with them.
I think, I mean, a lot of that just came from honestly reacting to the very thing you're describing, which was feeling like there wasn't a lot of I wasn't seeing a lot of coming of age stories that had a sort of subtler emotional touch and played more with like subtext and didn't have people saying things in really, like you're saying, sort of like glossy or melodramatic ways, but in the sort of like small indirect ways that in my own experience people often communicate big emotions.
Mhm.
And the more realistic and natural it felt to me, the better. And the more that somebody was saying one thing that really meant another, that was really exciting to me because that just felt like real life. And I think is also like plays into the entire experience of being closeted. I mean, the idea of something being coded, saying something while that's on the surface is acceptable or safe, but is really communicating another thing. And the idea of sort of like and like an unspoken understanding between people, all of that really like conjured the feeling of that time when things felt very secretive and you had to be very private and coy in the way that you communicated things. And so that was just really exciting to me. And it's also just I think I'll also with the humor, like not beating people over the head with any a humor that felt like I really wanted it to come from the small behavioral things from the characters and not from really like something that felt like a really written punchline. I really wanted a lot of the humor to just come from recognition of like, oh my God, I know that kind of person, or oh God, I used to say things like that and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Uh, you talked about setting this movie in the woods. Was that always the intention? Because you just spoke about, queer coded characters and queer coding. And, there's this tradition in cinema, especially with slashers, camp, queer coded
Yeah, yeah.
in the woods. Was that a thing that was that, like an underlying layer, or is it just to separate and isolate them away from technology so they could just have this moment together?
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's cool that you brought up slashers. I didn't even think about that. I think, I mean, for one, it was just like a practical way to make a movie, set because this is a small indie film to shoot it at a campsite. But beyond that, I liked the idea a lot that it was sort of, and our cinematographer Gus Bendinelli and I talked about this a lot of like finding a space away from home that feels safe because it's not connected to your personal life or your family in that way, where you can sort of start to explore these unknown parts of yourself and that you feel safer because you're sort of like in the middle of the woods. And then also I think that like that kind of environment is like also makes it tricky because you're so exposed. Like you are sharing a tent with your brother and you have no privacy. And there's other families and kids like right next to your campsite. And there was something that felt very like loaded and funny to me about somebody going through this tumultuous and private of an experience, just like at a campsite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what, made this even funnier was Isaac's portrayal of the character. Was that always an intention to make that character like so analytical and kind of mature, like the way he talked and thought about things, or was that something that he brought to the character of Jamie?
I mean, I definitely wanted Jamie to be sort of, in some ways, wise beyond his years and enjoy a character that enjoys being like an old soul and being told that he's an old soul, because that was definitely who I was as a kid. So I identified with that, but I also wanted it to also feel like there's this emotional deficit, like there is an emotional immaturity and a real neediness and like like a real desperation for love and attention. That there's a certain maturity he has and then a certain emotional immaturity that he has, and I think that Isaac just brought so much. He brought so much to the character. I felt like I could really only get that character so far with my own writing, and then having conversations with Isaac and then doing rehearsal with him and the other actors and improv fleshed the character out so much more. Like, for example, it was never written into the script that Jamie would be like fidgety, but Isaac brought this like amazing physicality where he's always playing with his hands or playing with a stick or something. And it just shows so much like non-verbally. It's like I felt it was such a great way of showing what's like how confusing and active his inner life is. And he himself is Isaac himself is just like a very smart person who is wise beyond his years in a lot of ways. And so I think that he could really identify with and play up that aspect of Jamie where he in some ways feels like he belongs more with like older people and adults, and that he can fit in with them, and that he can talk about the kinds of things that he's interested in with them. And I think it plays into his having this attraction to this older, more mature, confident guy, where he sees a sort of like a kindred spirit, but also someone who's beyond him, and this feeling of like, oh, I one day want to be that mature and that confident in myself, and the way that he idealizes adults as opposed to teenagers. I mean, that was something that I certainly felt as a kid, and I think that Isaac played that sort of like aspirational quality of Jamie beautifully.
I think that also plays into the you got a different actor to play Jamie in like the fantasy
Yeah,
sequences, because in his head he imagines himself as like this adult, which he like you said, like he is so far removed from this childhood world in himself that he sees himself as this idealized version of himself, and he's like in his late 20s 30s,
yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
is a great decision. I really like that.
Thanks.
um what were the biggest challenges in making this movie? Like obviously, it's an indie movie, but also like shooting outside, the light, just the elements. What were the biggest challenges for you?
Um, I think yeah, I mean, shooting outside in the woods was a really difficult thing. I think, honestly, in a lot of ways, it was more difficult for our producers because of the way that they had to just keep the ship running
Mm-hmm.
um, in these circumstances, which were, pretty uncomfortable, where, we were spending most of our days at a campsite and it could get hot or there could be a lot of bugs. Like we faced some like thunderstorms in the middle of the night, like driving on unpaved roads, getting stuck in mud, like just sort of gnarly production stuff, which was harrowing at times, but I also think did bond us together. Um, and created sort of like a summer camp, like we're in this together kind of vibe on set. I think for me, I felt like that sort of stuff I sort of anticipated, so I wasn't that surprised when like the physically demanding stuff started to happen. But I do think really it was just storytelling, because this was my first feature film, and so trying to keep the audience's attention focused on a clear story and have them be tracking these character dynamics and the ways that they're evolving was something that I was always thinking about throughout the writing, shooting, and editing process. And that was like the most exhilarating part of making the movie, and also just the most challenging, because um I really wanted the movie to keep your attention. Like one of my biggest fears was that people would get bored, and so I was really working with the actors and our editors and composers and really everybody to just how can we sort of achieve this tone of something that simultaneously feels like somewhat relaxed and like unhurried, because I just really wanted that quality in the movie, but also engaging and feels like it's moving forward. And so it was always like the push and pull of that kind of stuff, like doing something like, is this too stylized, or is this just enough to sort of throw a new element into the movie, and sort of trying to stay within the tone. And it really helped to have actors and collaborators who so deeply understood the aesthetic of the movie and the kind like the tone of the story, that we all were sort of like speaking the same language. um yeah, that was really fun.
Very cool. Very cool. It's sort of similar to, I did a lot of theater in high school, so it's sort of similar to like, the cast getting together and then, just putting on a play. And then once it's over, you just sort of kind of have this big, heavy collective sigh of like, we did that, just like summer camp, like you said, which is great.
Totally.
Um, I'm curious, how many days was the shoot? Because, it is outside, it's just a smaller cast.
Yeah, yeah, in total with like pickup days it was 23 shooting days.
Very cool. Very cool. I love it. What's next for you after you finish this festival run? Are there distribution plans in place yet?
Yeah. So we are signing on for distribution with this company called Dark Star Pictures, and it looks like we're going to be rolling the movie out next year, hopefully earlier in the year, in like the spring, like a limited theatrical release, and then we'll do like DVD sales, and we'll do streaming and all that stuff. So the movie, yeah, will be widely available next
Oh,
year.
that's so great. I'm very, very pleased to hear that because, like I said, I was like a huge fan of this movie, and there needs to be more focus on the variety of queer films out there. I really love the fact that this was, even though it came from like a very, teenage, pre like sexual hormonal place, it is very family friendly, and it just shows the wide breadth of queer cinema that's out there. And so I'm really glad that more eyes are going to be on this, and I'm really happy for your success because it's very much deserved. I do have a couple more questions.
Yeah.
What is next coming up for you after you finish this and it gets distributed? Are you writing something else? What's
Yeah. Yeah, I'm working on a couple of new scripts right now. I mean, I'm really Big Boys is in a lot of ways the kind of movie I want to keep making in the future. I mean, I really like this tone of something that feels very naturalistic, um, and like it has room to breathe, but is also very funny and moves forward with real like intention and momentum, and is as much of a crowd pleaser as possible. Like I really like making movies that are fun to watch in a theater. It's been so rewarding to sit with people and watch this movie and hear them laugh and like wince and cringe and cry a little bit and like all those different reactions. It's like so affirming to hear, because I wanted to make something that is just like really engaging and like a big fun crowd movie in that way. And so yeah, I'm just working on other stories, particularly queer stories, other sort of like coming of age moments in life. Like I'm really interested in the moment in life where you get to college or you first go out on your own and you have this sort of like kid in the candy store sort of like second adolescence, like when you're finally out and like you're finally meeting guys for the first time and experiencing that in the ways that it can just be a total like new emotional roller coaster. And just thinking about those other sort of like pivotal growing up moments in life has been really, really fun. And so, yeah, I mean, I hope to be shooting something next year because I feel like I really caught the features bug with Big Boys.
I love that. Yeah, I would love to see more just, slice of life,
Yeah.
low stakes, but high stakes for, who you become as a person from the outcome of, this moment. I love that. And
Thank you.
definitely
I'm so glad you said that. I love like slice of life, like low stakes, but high stakes is a very
right,
good.
exactly. Like a queer Noah Baumbach kind of, I'm ready for it. So congratulations. I have you sort of answered this question already, but I was just curious, like making a movie is so hard, and I've made a documentary, but when you finish that, and when you finally finished and did your final cut on Big Boys, and you like sat back and watched it, and you were like, I don't have to shoot anymore, I don't have to write anymore, there's no more editing.
Yeah.
How did that feel? Was there like a sort of relief? Was there fear? Because I've heard from a lot of people that usually it's fear, relief, and then the festival run starts.
To me, there's I'd say there's a little bit of relief, but honestly, for me, it's a lot of sadness. Like there's like nostalgia and a feeling of this thing meant so much to me and started from a very private and I would say like pretty wounded part of myself, and then expanded into this thing that was the most creatively fulfilling experience of my life, working with most talented people I've ever worked with, and in a way where people were also revealing a lot of their own inner lives and their own things that have happened to them. And so it was like this very healing process, and also gave me this thing to really focus on and obsess over, which I think filmmakers are often like looking for, that thing to just like to sort of like build your life around. And I like how all consuming filmmaking is in that way. But then and it's also there's yeah, there's sort of like a nostalgia and a sadness to saying goodbye to it all and moving on to something else, and realizing that that was an experience that was from one specific time, and that you can have something just as great again, but you'll never have that exact thing again. And particularly because it was the first, and we're young and working with young actors, it had like a real sort of special, pretty magical quality. And so I'm definitely, yeah, I mean, there's a ton of pride and joy, and also, yeah, a little bit like some melancholy.
Yeah, that's very well said and very true. Again, Corey, thank you so much for talking to me. I love the film. Everyone, please seek it out. It will be, widely available next year. But for now, you can catch it Saturday, September 23rd at 6 p.m., followed by Big Where the Bears Are, for like a nice big bear double feature out on
Yeah,
film.
yeah.
So please check out Big Boys whenever you can. Corey Sherman, thank you again for talking to me.
Thank you, Leo. This was great. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you. Same.